February 23, 1945. Mount Suribachi, Iwo Jima, Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto crouched inside a concrete emplacement, hands shaking as he penned words that, if found by his superiors, would have brought him death. The Marines are not like ordinary men. They do not perish like other soldiers. Everything we'd been told about American frailty was false. Through the firing slit, he had just seen something that overturned every assumption hammered into him during training. 6 Marines had charged his position beneath a hail of machine gun fire. 3 went down, yet the others kept pushing forward. When his unit rained grenades on them, 1 Marine took the blast into his own body to shield his squad, then kept fighting with mortal wounds until he physically could no longer hold his rifle. The survivors captured the position in minutes. 21,000 Japanese defenders manned Iwo Jima, embedded in 18 kilometers of tunnels and fortifications. They had been told they faced weak American soldiers who would break under pressure. What they met instead would demolish every military judgment the Imperial Japanese Army had formed about their foe. The arithmetic of that miscalculation was being written not in plans, but in the brutal reality of close combat that would cost 26,000 Marines as casualties in just 36 days. The erosion of Japanese confidence had begun long before Iwo Jima. August 7, 1942, Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands, Corporal Hideo Takahashi, a veteran of the China campaign where Japanese forces had seemed unstoppable, recorded in his diary after the first week of fighting, "The Americans who landed are different from any enemy we've faced. They do not break when encircled. They do not surrender when a position is hopeless. Most unnerving, they fight at night as if darkness strengthens rather than frightens them." Guadalcanal was Japan's first defensive engagement in the Pacific, and the Imperial Army expected a simple victory over raw American units. The 1st Marine Division ashore numbered just over 16,000 men. Japanese intelligence acknowledged Marines as elite, but still Americans, products of a soft, democratic society that prized personal comfort over collective sacrifice. Within days, every assumption collapsed catastrophically. Lieutenant Shigeru Fukudome led a reinforced company ordered to retake Henderson Field on the night of August 20. His 200 men had beaten Chinese divisions twice their size. They advanced in textbook formation, sure the Americans would panic in darkness. The Marines waited in prepared positions with overlapping fields of fire. Fukudome's company walked into a slaughter. What followed contradicted Japanese tactical doctrine. Instead of digging in, the Marines immediately counterattacked into the black, using automatic weapons with deadly precision. Fuku's diary, recovered after his death 3 days later, noted his disbelief. "They attacked us in the night. We are the ones who attack at night. They crossed jungle we thought impassable. They killed silently, then disappeared. By morning, 90 men remained from my company. The Americans had suffered 12 casualties. The pattern repeated across Guadalcanal. Japanese troops, used to enemies who shattered under banzai onslaughts, found Marines who held their ground until physically overwhelmed, then fought hand-to-hand with bayonets, knives, and fists." Sergeant Kenji Matsumoto, who survived 4 months on Guadalcanal before evacuation, wrote in a letter intercepted by American intelligence, "We were taught Americans are individualistic, that they will not sacrifice for comrades. This is untrue. I saw a Marine machine gunner keep firing with both legs shattered until Japanese infantry killed him at point-blank range. His assistant immediately grabbed the gun and kept firing. We lost 40 men to that position. The Marine training that forged such fighters baffled Japanese analysts. Private Yamamoto, who would later oppose Marines on Iwo Jima, first learned of them in 1943 intelligence briefs. The instructor, a staff officer who had interrogated captured Marines, seemed genuinely unsettled. The American Marines endure training that would be called criminal abuse in any civilized army. They are broken down mentally and physically, then rebuilt into something barely resembling the soft civilians who arrived. They are taught to regard death in battle as honorable, to never surrender, to fight until physically unable. This sounds familiar. Yes, they have borrowed our Bushido, but added what we did not foresee, American industrial might. The mix proved lethal. Japanese troops schooled in Bushido accepted death before dishonor, but they fought with gear ever more inferior to American arms. Marines endured training nearly as harsh as Japanese soldiers. producing warriors equally willing to die. But those Marines landed with overwhelming firepower that made Japanese positions untenable. November 20th, 1943, Tarawa Atoll. Rear Admiral Kei Shibasaki commanded 4,500 defenders in fortifications deemed impregnable. The 2nd Marine Division proved otherwise in 76 hours. Private First Class Tadashi Ogawa, one of only 17 Japanese survivors, told interrogators what he saw. The first wave was slaughtered in the water. We killed hundreds. More craft came. The second wave perished on the beach. More came. The third wave reached our works with flamethrowers. They did not stop until we were dead, or they were... The toll was merciless. Nearly 6,410 men died on Tarawa in 76 hours. The Marines who survived showed they would seize any objective regardless of cost. Documents captured on Saipan in 1944 contained Japanese intelligence describing Marines as shock troops. Showing fanatical devotion to goals, Marines refuse orders to withdraw and counterattack, even when tactically disadvantaged. Casualties inflicted on Marines do not degrade unit effectiveness until the unit is annihilated. End quote. This assessment came from methodical study. Captain Yoshio Kobayashi, who survived Guadalcanal, offered detailed contrasts. American Army infantry tactics are sound and orthodox. The Marines operate differently. They press forward aggressively regardless of losses. They accept casualty rates that would force any rational commander to stop. This is unprecedented. The speed of Marine operations was as destructive as their firepower. Lieutenant Colonel Kunio Nakagawa, who commanded on Peleliu, planned defenses based on earlier campaigns where American forces halted after landings. The Marines did not hesitate. They landed September 15th at 8:30 and held half the airfield by nightfall. Nakagawa's diary recorded his astonishment. My defense plan collapsed because it assumed the enemy would act rationally. The Marines do not act rationally. They act with complete commitment, regardless of circumstances. This total commitment appeared suicidal to Japanese observers, but proved devastatingly effective. Sergeant Kenji Matsumoto, captured on Bougainville, described watching a Marine platoon attack a fortified hill. The approach crossed open ground raked by machine gun fire from 3 bunkers. Japanese doctrine called for heavy artillery preparation, followed by infantry assault under smoke. The Marine lieutenant assessed the position for perhaps 30 seconds, then ordered the assault with no preparation. The platoon charged into the fire. 7 fell in the first 20 seconds. Survivors reached the first bunker and destroyed it with grenades and demolition charges. 3 more died attacking the second bunker. The remaining Marines took it. The third bunker fell to the last 5 men standing. The platoon lost 12 of 37 to seize an supposedly impregnable position. The whole action took 4 minutes from order to finish. This was not mere bravery. It was the systematic use of acceptable losses to achieve objectives faster than we could respond. The idea of acceptable casualties appalled Japanese officers trained to preserve soldiers' lives within mission constraints. Marines calculated losses as the cost of victory and paid it without hesitation when the objective warranted. This produced a psychological edge beyond material superiority. Japanese commanders, aware Marines would accept 50% casualties to seize a position, faced impossible choices: defend with too few and lose the ground, defend with enough and weaken other sectors, abandon the ground and deny the terrain. Every choice led to defeat. The only variable was timing. Major Yoshi Takahori, senior staff on Iwo Jima who survived the battle, analyzed this in post-war interrogations. General Kuribayashi understood we could not stop the Marines. Our defenses were meant to delay them and inflict maximum casualties. We achieved that brilliantly. Over 20,000 Marines were killed or wounded in 36 days. That would have broken any other army's capacity to keep attacking. The Marines reinforced and pressed on with no drop in intensity. We estimated that inflicting 10,000 casualties would halt them for at least a week. They suffered 10,000 in the first week and still pushed onward. This revealed the fundamental imbalance. They could replace losses faster than we could. They had 50 Marine divisions in the Pacific Theater and training back home. We had finite defenders on each isle. Arithmetic predestined our defeat. The math extended beyond manpower. Marines arrived with logistics enabling sustained operations at intensities Japan could not match. Second Lieutenant Toshio Yamamoto, captured on Saipan, saw the contrast during a night patrol. I led a group to observe American positions 3 days after their landing. We expected exhausted troops with little supplies, like Japanese units would be after days of intense fighting on a contested beachhead. Instead, we found Marines eating hot food, receiving ammunition by truck, with medical tents treating the wounded and rest areas where units rotated from the line. Their supply dumps held more ammo than my whole regiment owned. Mobile kitchens prepared fresh meals. They had portable showers and laundry. They were fighting the fiercest battle of the Pacific War and living better than we did in garrison. This showed that defeating them was impossible. They would never run out of food, ammo, medicine, or replacements. The relentless American logistics created an attritional warfare that favored the Marines despite higher initial losses. Japanese defenders fought from fixed works with limited supplies and no reinforcements. Each casualty was permanent. Each round expended could not be replaced. Marines fought from an expanding beachhead with resupply arriving daily by ship and air. Wounded were evacuated and replaced. Ammunition was plentiful. The longer a fight continued, the weaker Japanese defenders grew while Marines became stronger. This dynamic decided Peleliu, where Colonel Nakagawa's defense lasted from September 15 to November 27. The 1st Marine Division suffered such heavy losses, it was withdrawn and replaced by elements of the 80-1 Stones Infantry Division in October. A 2nd Marine Division carried on until army units relieved them. The battle that Japanese planners thought would last 1 week lasted 11. Japanese defenders inflicted over 10,000 American casualties, but the Americans could absorb those losses and keep attacking. Japan could not defend every island at that cost. The unsustainability was clear to Japanese military leaders by mid-1944. Intelligence summaries sent to garrison commanders conceded Marines could not be stopped, only delayed. One document captured on Tinian offered guidance that showed complete abandonment of hope for victory. When facing a Marine assault, do not expect to hold positions indefinitely. The aim is to delay the American advance long enough to enable other strategic aims. Each day of resistance matters. Each Marine killed or wounded is valuable. But know the position will fall. Prepare accordingly. Stock positions with maximum ammunition. Build redundant defenses. Plan staged withdrawals. Accept that you will likely die defending. Your sacrifice gains time for the Empire. There is honor in this sacrifice, even without triumph. This grim calculus shaped Japanese defensive strategy in the Pacific's final year. Defenders no longer fought to win battles. They fought to make battles so costly the Americans might negotiate rather than invade Japan itself. Marines, by accepting losses that would have stopped other armies, negated that strategy. They paid the price and kept advancing. No cost was too high, no position too strong. The offensive never ceased. Private Tadashi Gawa, one of the few Tarawa survivors, later described the psychological blow of facing such an enemy. After the first day, we knew we would lose. The Marines had landed in overwhelming force. They had naval gunfire that smashed our works. They had air support that bombed us constantly. Still, we believed we could exact such a terrible price they might think twice about future invasions. Then we watched them keep attacking despite horrific losses. They walked into machine gun fire that killed dozens. More Marines came behind them. We killed them too. More came. We fought 3 days with absolute resolve. We inflicted thousands of casualties. We died nearly to the last man. And the Marines took Tarawa on schedule. They paid the price we demanded and moved across the Pacific. That was when we understood the war was lost. An enemy who will pay any price to win cannot be beaten by making victory costly. This realization spread through the Japanese military as survivors from each fight carried their experiences forward. By the time Marines landed on Iwo Jima in February 1945, every Japanese defender knew they faced the most relentless foe in the Pacific. They knew they would die. They knew the Marines would take the island. The only question was how many Marines would die with them. General Kuribayashi's defensive scheme accepted these truths and shaped strategy around them. His orders to troops acknowledged what official propaganda denied. We cannot win this battle. We can only make the Americans bleed for every meter we yield. That is our mission. Accept death. Inflict casualties. Delay their advance. This is how we serve the Empire in its darkest hour. That judgment proved accurate again and again. February 19, 1945, D-Day on Iwo Jima provided the most complete Japanese military appraisal of marine capabilities. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, perhaps the most able defensive commander Japan fielded in the Pacific, spent months studying marine tactics and constructing defenses specifically to defeat them. His preparations were extraordinary, but before I tested Kuribayashi's theories, Marine raiders had already shown capabilities beyond standard excellence. These elite units carried out deep penetration raids that sowed terror far out of proportion to their small numbers. Japanese forces discovered raiders operated in darkness with devastating effect. Colonel Kono Ichiki learned that lesson fatally on Guadalcanal in August 1942. His 900 men had routed Chinese formations through aggressive night assaults. Japanese doctrine assumed Americans dreaded darkness. Ichi planned a textbook night attack on marine positions along the Tanaru River. Raiders from the 1st Marine Raider Battalion lay in ambush. Ichiki's force waded the river at 130 hours on August 21. Raiders opened up at point-blank range with automatic weapons and pre-registered artillery support. The fight lasted 20 minutes. Japanese losses exceeded 700 dead. Marine casualties were 35. The raiders were later disbanded and absorbed into regular Marine divisions in 1944, but their methods spread through the force. By standard Marine infantry adopted techniques the raiders had proven. Night patrols probed without cease. Small teams made autonomous choices. Communications enabled coordination like never before. The outcome was an enemy that fought around the clock with an intensity Japanese units could not match. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, who fought on 3 islands before capture on Okinawa, summed it up. The Marines never stopped. Day assaults with overwhelming firepower. Night strikes by small units infiltrating our works. Constant artillery harassment denying rest. Air attacks during daylight. We were under relentless pressure from landing to defeat. Japanese troops once controlled the night and could rest and reorganize after daylight battles. Against the Marines there was no respite, no safe hour. Only continuous combat until death or capture. This was industrial warfare without mercy. The industrial side of Marine operations both fascinated and frightened Japanese analysts. Unlike Japanese units that relied on spirit and individual sacrifice to offset material shortfalls, Marines systematically applied maximum force to each problem. Facing a fortified emplacement, they did not depend on courage or trickery. They located the position, called in artillery that fired hundreds of rounds to demolish it, brought tanks with flamethrowers to burn out survivors, then sent infantry to secure the ground. If resistance persisted, naval gunfire from destroyers or battleships would obliterate the sector. This methodical destruction was horrifying in its efficiency. Second Lieutenant Saburo Endo, an artillery forward observer on Saipan, witnessed Marine combined arms tactics during the June 1944 invasion. His diary logged detailed notes. The Marines landed under shipborne covering fire that never stopped for 3 hours before the first boats hit the beach. Aircraft bombed our positions for 2 hours before the landing. When Marines came ashore, every move had tank, artillery, naval and air support. They advanced deliberately and carefully, destroying everything in their path. When we held them at prepared points, they called battleship fire that literally erased hills. They did not attempt to overcome positions by courage or cunning. They used overwhelming force to remove the obstacles, then moved forward. This is not warfare as we know it. This is industrial annihilation applied until resistance is impossible. We fought with rifles and light machine guns. They fought with an entire nation's industrial resources. Endo's notes captured what many Japanese soldiers realized too late. The Pacific War was not a contest of warrior spirit or tactical brilliance. It was a contest between Imperial Japan's limited industry and America's vast production. Marines were the spearhead of that production. Warriors trained to exploit American advantages ruthlessly while accepting casualties that leveraged superior numbers and replacements. Against such a foe, Japanese courage and skill counted for nothing. The outcome was mathematically decided from the start. Only the length and cost varied. Kuribayashi forbade banzai charges that had squandered lives before. He built a defense in depth that funneled Marines into killing zones covered by multiple bunkers. He emplaced artillery to deliver devastating fire on landing beaches. He constructed 11 miles of tunnels linking 1,500 cave positions. Every approach was registered for mortar and artillery fire. The beach was a slaughter ground. 3 Marine divisions, 70,000 men, landed on Iwo Jima on February 19. Kuribayashi's defenses functioned as intended. Naval bombardment barely nicked the fortifications. Marines landed in ordered waves and immediately bled horribly. Within minutes, the black volcanic sand was strewn with dead and wounded. Japanese artillery observers directed perfectly coordinated fires. The assault looked doomed. Then something Kuribayashi had not fully expected occurred, although prior battles should have warned him. The Marines did not fall back to regroup. They pushed into the artillery zones. They exploited gaps between Japanese positions. When bunkers halted the advance, demolition teams crawled forward under fire to destroy them. When those teams died, others replaced them. The assault never ceased. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto watched from his bunker as Marines attacked the position to his right. His diary records Japanese incomprehension. A Marine flamethrower team approached the bunker. We killed the operator. His assistant picked up the weapon and kept firing. We killed him. A third Marine took the flamethrower. We wounded him badly. He kept firing until the fuel was spent. Then he tossed grenades into the firing ports until we killed him. By then, demolition men had reached the bunker entrance. The position was lost. This occurred 30 times in the first hour. How do you defeat men who will not stop? The answer, Japanese defenders found, was, you cannot. The brutal arithmetic of Iwo Jima displayed Marine doctrine at its purest. 70,000 Marines landed. 26,000 became casualties, nearly 7,000 killed. But all 21,000 Japanese defenders died except for one. 6 captured, most because they were unconscious or too wounded to fight. The Marines paid an almost unimaginable cost. But they seized every objective. Kuribayashi himself, who held out until late March 1945, wrote his final assessment in a message smuggled to Tokyo before the position fell. The Marines are the most effective fighting force I have encountered. They have several traits that make them uniquely dangerous. First, their training produces soldiers willing to accept losses that would crack other units. Second, their firepower surpasses ours by roughly 5-to-1 in artillery and 10-to-1 in air support. Third, their junior leaders decide at the squad level. Decisions our officers reserve for company level, letting them exploit opportunities faster than we can react. Fourth, and most crucial, they never stop attacking. There is no defense that can endure this combination forever. This last point terrorized Japanese defenders across the Pacific. Soldiers could accept defeat in battle. They could grasp being outgunned or outmaneuvered. What they could not fathom was an enemy that simply would not stop regardless of losses. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, who fought on 3 islands before capture on Okinawa, explained post-war, "You must understand the difference between Marines and other American forces. Army units would attack, suffer losses, and pull back to reorganize. This is sensible doctrine. Marines would attack, take casualties, and keep attacking over the bodies of their dead. This is not military doctrine. This is something else entirely. The quality that made Marines so feared was deliberately forged through training that stripped recruits down and rebuilt them into warriors whose identity was inseparable from the Corps. Documents seized on Saipan included interrogation reports of a Marine prisoner who explained the transformation to stunned Japanese officers. Boot camp lasts 8 weeks. During the first 4, drill instructors destroy every civilian trait in the recruit. You are told you are worthless, that you will never be a Marine, that you should quit and join the army. The abuse is psychological and physical. You are pushed to the point you think you cannot proceed, then pushed further. Those who quit are shamed publicly. Those who remain learn surrender is not an option. The interrogation noted the Japanese officer's reaction. This resembles our training but is more systematic. Then the Marine prisoner described something without parallel in Japanese training. In the second 4 weeks, the instructors build you into a Marine. You learn you are part of something larger than yourself. Every Marine who ever lived is your brother. This produced something unique. Marines fought because failure meant betraying every Marine before you. That psychological pressure created fighters who advanced when rational calculation said to stop. Japanese forces encountered this mentality at its most concentrated during Banzai charges that should have succeeded but failed catastrophically. October 24 to November 25, 1944, Saipan, Colonel Takuya Takasha, led roughly 3,000 Japanese soldiers in a final banzai against Marine positions. Doctrine held that such an assault with absolute commitment would break any defense by sheer ferocity and the defenders' fear of being overrun. The Marines of the 27th Infantry Division, positioned in the path, were mostly sleeping when the charge began. At 0300, Japanese soldiers surged into the lines, screaming, bayonets fixed, aiming to overwhelm forward positions by numbers. Conventional doctrine would call for a fighting withdrawal to regroup. The Marines counterattacked immediately. Officers and sergeants organized desperate defensive stands at key points. Marines used everything from artillery fired at point-blank range to trench knives in hand-to-hand combat. The fight lasted 4 hours. At dawn, Japanese bodies covered a 500-meter depth. American losses were 90 killed and 247 wounded. 3,000 Japanese soldiers died. Private First Class Tishi Yoshida survived the charge with grave wounds. His interrogation report, filed 3 days later, captured Japanese shock. We were told Americans fear close combat, that they rely on firepower because they are cowards. We charged into their lines, expecting them to break. They fought hand-to-hand and defeated us. I saw a Marine sergeant kill 7 men with a bayonet and pistol before he fell. This is not cowardice. We were lied to. The falsehoods extended to every aspect of Marine capability. Japanese propaganda had long painted Americans as soft, individualistic people who could not endure hardship. Marines sleeping in foxholes ankle-deep in water, eating cold rations for weeks, fighting in 100-degree heat with 80% humidity, contradicted those claims. Japanese soldiers trained for hardship watched Marines thrive in conditions that pushed Japanese endurance to the limit. Corporal Kenji Matsumoto, who survived Guadalcanal before transfer to Bougainville, where he was captured in February 1944, described the contrast. By September 1942, we were on reduced rations, rice twice daily, sometimes less. We supplemented with anything edible in the jungle. We watched the Marines eat 3 full meals daily, sometimes more. They received regular resupply by air and sea. They had fresh water, medical supplies, and ammo without limit. We realized we were fighting an enemy who would never run out of resources. That knowledge broke something in us. The material superiority Marines enjoyed was devastating. Facing bunkers, Marines called in artillery that delivered hundreds of shells in minutes, brought forward Sherman tanks with flamethrowers, and used naval gunfire capable of leveling hills. If that failed, demolition teams stacked hundreds of pounds of explosives against positions. Lieutenant Shigeru Fuku, before his death on Guadalcanal, authored the most complete analysis of Marine combined arms tactics captured during the war. The Marines do not fight as isolated soldiers. They fight as parts of a single machine. Riflemen pinpointed our positions. Machine gunners suppressed any return fire. Mortars released smoke to block the view of our observers. Artillery pounded our bunkers. Tanks advanced with infantry close behind. Aircraft struck any targets beyond artillery's reach. All of this unfolded within minutes of engagement, directed by junior officers using radios we lacked. We could not match their speed. By the time our commanders grasped the situation and issued orders, the Marines had already acted, exploiting every weakness. Their rapid execution came from authority delegated to the smallest units. Sergeants made choices that, in our army, required a captain's approval. Corporals led attacks that would have demanded a lieutenant's sanction in imperial ranks. The result was an adversary who adapted faster than we could react. When a bunker halted their progress, a sergeant instantly redirected the assault through another approach while calling for supporting fire without awaiting orders. Japanese defenders often faced foes who struck from unexpected angles because the Marines identified and used weaknesses before our officers even realized they existed. The weapon we feared most wasn't their rifles or artillery. It was the flamethrower. Japanese soldiers raised to die honorably learned that fire offered no such death. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, captured on Okinawa with severe burns over nearly half his body, described its horror. We were taught that dying by bullet, bayonet, or shell was glorious. Fire is different. You see it coming, hear the screams, smell flesh burning. There is no honor in that, only industrial slaughter. The Marines understood something we did not. Modern war has no place for glory. Its purpose is efficiency, to kill the enemy as swiftly and completely as possible using every tool available. This realization came too late for most Japanese troops. By 1944, every soldier in the Pacific knew what it meant to face Marines, the deadliest combination of training, weapons, and doctrine America could field. Intelligence reports circulating among Japanese garrisons spoke of Marines with both reverence and dread, verging on superstition. One document recovered from Tinian in July 1944 laid out detailed instructions for resisting Marine assaults. It admitted truths long denied by propaganda. First, Marines were, on average, physically larger and stronger, the result of better childhood nutrition. Second, they carried superior weapons, abundant ammunition, and more reliable equipment. Third, their training emphasized marksmanship beyond anything our army practiced. The average Marine rifleman could hit targets far beyond the range of our soldiers. Fourth, they always fought with air and naval support we could neither match nor counter. Fifth, and most crucial, they believed surrender was disgraceful. They fought to win or die. There was no middle ground. The same document's tactical advice betrayed how far Japanese confidence had eroded. It warned, do not expect Marines to retreat. Do not assume casualties will break their morale. Do not believe that superior numbers guarantee advantage. Their firepower cancels numerical superiority. Never attempt banzai charges unless utterly desperate. Marines will annihilate attacking troops with automatic weapons and artillery. Do not expect them to fear the night. They fight as effectively in darkness as in daylight. The only workable defense is in layered, pre-constructed positions with interlocking fields of fire, designed to delay them while inflicting maximum casualties before inevitable defeat. This bleak realism offered no path to victory. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, tasked with defending Iwo Jima in early 1945, understood this completely. In a January letter to his wife, a month before the invasion, he wrote, "I have been ordered to hold Iwo Jima against the American Marines. It is a mathematical problem with only one solution. They will land 70,000 men, control the sea and sky, and bring limitless supplies. They will attack until the island falls. My mission is not to defeat them, that cannot be done. My duty is to make them pay a price so terrible that the Americans might hesitate to invade Japan itself. Each day we delay them buys time for the Empire. Every Marine we kill is one less in the final defense of our homeland." Kuribayashi's plan reflected Japan's shift from confident aggression to desperate endurance. The Marines who stormed Iwo Jima on February 19th faced defenses designed not to stop them, but to bleed them, to make victory unbearably costly. Every fortification required direct assault. Each cave and bunker was covered by multiple interlocking positions. Every yard of ground demanded lives. Yet the plan failed for one reason. It misunderstood Marine psychology. Heavy losses did not break their resolve. They strengthened it. Each fallen Marine fueled the survivors' fury. The harsher the battle became, the more relentlessly they fought. To Japanese soldiers, this was madness. In their doctrine, even fanatical troops had limits. To Marines, it was identity. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto, who died on March 10th in his bunker, recorded this revelation in his final diary entry. "Tomorrow, the Marines will reach us. We have killed hundreds in the past 3 weeks. More come every day. They do not tire, they do not slow, they do not stop. I thought our spirit was stronger than their materialism. I was wrong. The Marines have both spirit and material, courage equal to ours, but with weapons and supplies beyond imagination. They are what we pretended to be. We are what we claimed they were. That is the truth we die knowing." His position was destroyed. The next morning, after a 6-hour firefight that killed all 11 defenders and wounded 3 Marines. The fight delayed the American advance by 40 minutes before other units bypassed the ruins and pressed forward while engineers leveled the bunker. That scene repeated itself thousands of times across Iwo Jima. Japanese troops fought with tragic bravery, inflicting terrible losses, but achieving nothing beyond their own deaths. The campaign ended on March 26. The numbers told the story of what happens when Marines confronted Japan's best defenses. Of 21,000 defenders, all but 1,600 died, most of those too wounded to resist. The Marines suffered 26,000 casualties out of 70,000. Nearly 40%. Any other army would have needed months to recover. The 3rd, 4th and 5th Marine Divisions returned to action in just 6 weeks. That resilience, the capacity to absorb devastating losses and keep fighting, became what Japanese soldiers feared most. Corporal Kenji Matsumoto, imprisoned in Hawaii after capture, explained in 1946, "The worst part was knowing they would never stop. You could destroy half a Marine unit and the rest would still attack, kill their leaders, and sergeants would take command, exhaust them, and they would attack again the next morning. There was no way to win. You could only kill them until they killed you. That is not war, that is annihilation. And they had more men than we did." Japan's planners were stunned by America's capacity to replace losses. Reports from late 1944 observed that Marine divisions on Peleliu suffered 75% casualties in September, yet returned to full strength within 3 months. Those replacements landed on Iwo Jima and fought as effectively as the veterans they replaced. The Japanese army had nothing comparable, no training system, no replacement chain capable of preserving unit quality after catastrophic losses. American efficiency extended to every aspect of warfare. Wounded Marines received treatment within minutes. Evacuation by sea or air delivered them to hospital ships within hours. Blood plasma, antibiotics, and surgery saved lives at unprecedented rates. Japanese wounded, by contrast, died of infection, malnutrition, and untreated injuries. Captured soldiers saw Americans who should have perished survive, and returned to battle. After Japan's surrender in August 1945, Marines occupied the home islands expecting suicidal resistance. Instead, they found a broken population relieved the war was over. Private First Class Tishi Yoshida, repatriated in 1946 after recovering from Saipan wounds, recalled, "Everything we were told was false. The Marines did not torture prisoners. They gave us food, medicine, and shelter. They treated us better than our own officers did. The Americans were not savages. We were realizing that destroyed whatever faith we still had in the empire. Thousands of veterans reached the same conclusion. Post-war interrogations revealed a consistent pattern, deep respect for Marine fighting ability, bitterness toward their own leadership's lies, and recognition that Japan never had the means to win, not against America's industry or the Marines' discipline." The clearest expression came in General Kuribayashi's final message, transmitted on March 21, just 5 days before Iwo Jima fell. "I have fought the Marines for 31 days. They are the finest soldiers I have ever faced. Their training is unmatched, their weapons overwhelming, their courage equal to ours, and their numbers endless. Japan cannot defeat such an enemy. We can only die fighting and hope our deaths buy time for peace. To my fellow officers preparing to defend Japan, the Marines will come. You cannot stop them. You can only make them pay for every meter of ground and hope the cost forces negotiation." That hope died with the atomic bombings in August. Yet Kuribayashi's judgment proved correct. The Marines were the spearhead that shattered Japan's island defenses. They paid a staggering price in blood, but never failed to capture their targets, never withdrew, never surrendered. They became everything Japanese propaganda had claimed the Imperial Army was, unbreakable warriors willing to die before retreating. The irony was that Marine strength came not from mysticism or racial superiority, but from structure, rigorous training, modern logistics, and overwhelming material power. They embodied the fusion of courage and industry, discipline and technology, sacrifice and abundance. Japan had courage and training. America had everything else. The Marines represented that total power as no other American force could. Japanese veterans later recognized this. Corporal Hideo Takahashi, interviewed in 1975, summarized it plainly: "We were taught that spirit conquers matter, that our will to die made us invincible. The Marines showed us that spirit combined with material strength conquers spirit alone. They were as willing to die as we were, but they had tanks, naval guns, endless ammunition, air cover, medicine, and food. We had rifles and courage and promises of victory. That was never enough. The statistics confirm the truth. From Guadalcanal in August 1942 to Okinawa in June 1945, the Marines fought in every major Pacific campaign. They suffered 86,000 casualties, including nearly 20,000 dead, but never failed to seize their objectives or yield captured ground. Their cost was immense, their success absolute. Post-war Japanese analysts agreed unanimously. The Marines were the ultimate expression of American military power, a blend of Bushido-like ethos with industrial capability. They produced soldiers ready to die for victory, but equipped them with the means to achieve it. That combination was unbeatable. The lesson came too late for the 21,000 who died on Iwo Jima, the 30,000 on Okinawa, and the hundreds of thousands preparing for battles that never came. Those men knew only one truth: that Marines were the enemy they feared above all, the unstoppable force their commanders could not repel, the warriors who advanced regardless of losses, until none remained to oppose them. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto's final words, written hours before his death, captured the essence of this realization. The Marines will win not because they are braver, nor because they desire victory more, but because their nation gives them everything they need to win, and they use it without hesitation until we are gone. We are samurai fighting with swords against men who have machine guns and the spirit of samurai. There was never any hope, only death. His diary, recovered from the ruins of his bunker, joined thousands of similar documents, all bearing witness to the same truth. Fighting the Marines was unlike fighting any other force. They were America's perfect synthesis of courage and capacity, of relentless will and limitless supply. In the end, courage alone could not stand against that. Training, determination, and spirit could not overcome an enemy that matched those qualities and added firepower, organization, and resources beyond reach. The Japanese military chose death. The Marines delivered it, with methodical precision. That was why Japanese soldiers feared the Marines more than any other foe. The Marines promised to take the objective, and always did. They vowed to pay any price, and always paid it. They never stopped. From Guadalcanal to Okinawa, Japanese defenders learned through agony that courage meant nothing against an enemy who combined their own will to fight with power multiplied by industry. When the war ended and illusion gave way to truth, even Japan's survivors admitted what their leaders never had. The Marines were everything Japan claimed to be, and everything Japan could never become against such an enemy. The war had been lost before it began. The Marines merely proved it, one island at a time, at a cost written in blood.